Welcome to Blackbriar Gaming. Today, I'll be sharing my top 5 tips for running a narrative campaign. Horus Heresy's greatest strength is its deep story and rich characters. For this reason, Heresy players often gravitate towards narrative campaigns for both casual play with their mates and at more formal events. Narrative campaigns can go pear-shaped, however, so I thought I'd share 5 ways to make sure your narrative-based gameplay is simple, fun, and engaging. A quick note before we get into it: a subscribe and a like really helps us reach a bigger audience. So if you enjoyed the video, please hit those buttons down below. Also be sure to check out our affiliate link in the description. So what have we been up to? I play my Heresy games, out at Jolt Games here in Canberra. Now, for anyone that doesn't know Jolt Games and happens to live in Canberra, you're missing out. I don't know what you're doing with your life. It's an amazing gaming store only a kilometre from my house, which is such a treat. Lewis, the owner there, great guy. Their store setup is fantastic. Lots of gaming table, lots of space, nice and bright, nice and open. So, Jolt Games, the place to be in Canberra. And they've been running a campaign that they've got from Guerrilla Miniatures Games. Now, this campaign is narrative-based, as I think Heresy campaigns should be, and it's a lot of fun. So it's kind of like a slow grow, starts at 1,000 points, and was it 750 points? It wasn't much, couldn't have been, must have been 1,000. And slowly grows each week by about 250 points, I believe. And each week you bring something new, you play some games, you get some campaign points, and they go towards the narrative outcome, which is trying to escape off this planet where all of your legions have been marooned, and that's why you're fighting it out. So really enjoyable, great example of a pretty simple narrative campaign that is perfect for new players, and it's really great for just teaching the local community and all the new players we're seeing coming into Heresy how to play this game and how to play the new edition. Great for new players and great for veterans as well, to make sure that we're learning the new rule system and growing the community while we do it. So that's what I've been up to, and it got me thinking about other people, and I've seen in comments that other people are looking for tips and ideas on how to run events in their own locations. Tournament organizers that were really interested in some of the more casual events and structures that I've noted or mentioned recently. So I thought I'd put these 5 ideas together. So let's have a look at them. Number 5, simple mechanics. So if you're going to add another layer of rules to this game system, you have to make sure those rules are creating fun, that they're meaningful, and that they're easy to implement as well. This is already a pretty complicated game system. So if you're going to add even more stuff on top of that, you need to make sure it's great. It's making for a really nice campaign, and that players are going to enjoy interacting with those extra rules. More rules and mechanics doesn't necessarily add to the enjoyment of the players. So just think about that. In the case of the campaign that we're playing out at Jolt, the only extra, mechanics to the game are the campaign points that you add up at the end of each game, and that you can then spend mostly on extraction points or ritual points to get out of the system, which is very narrative based. And then there's little bonuses here or there that unlock army build types, or that unlock little bonuses in games, but they're kind of a once-off piece, so it's not too hard to remember. It's a pretty good system overall. Simple. Simplicity is the key here. So it's all about developing a system that provides continuity and reward without creating a barrier to engagement. I've seen some events run where there's just so much extra stuff around just the core game, and you have to develop multiple lists, and you have all these other restrictions, and suddenly you're doing multiple extra things each game that just add too much complexity. But you find that players forget things, they miss things, that takes away from the enjoyment, or it's just people see potentially the event pack to an event and it's just so complex that it turns them away before they even turn up. So that is number 5, simple mechanics. Keep it simple, make sure it's fun and easy to play. Number 4, reward actions beyond victory. So most campaigns have a reward system of some description. This is your chance to really shape the type of event you want to run. Do you want it to be competitive, or do you want it to be super inclusive for new players? Or is there a sweet spot somewhere in between there? I find that the key to any campaign reward system is to encourage the kind of behaviors you want out of your community or out of your event. This often means rewarding player interaction other than just simply winning battles. I've played plenty of events where you get 2 points if you win a battle, no points if you lose, 1 point if you draw, and that's about the extent and the thinking that goes into their reward system. And it's not good. We can do so much better than that. The campaign that we're playing out at Jolt, it rewards painting. You actually get points for your victory points, I think they're called within the game. So every victory point equals a campaign point. I played a really close game last week where I just managed to scrape a win, 10 points, but my opponent, a new player who I was helping a bit throughout the game, he managed to come in at 9 points. So, he still felt really good even with his loss because he was getting lots of campaign points out of it within the game. So common things that I like to see rewarded besides winning games is painting. That's a big one. Painted armies are for closers. Fun objectives, so just really interesting, fun little things, whether it be killing a certain type of unit or a certain type of character, or doing something on the board, getting to a certain location, little extra objectives here and there, add for a bit of fun. Narrative achievements are always really good. So if you've got an overarching narrative to your campaign, and I, of course, recommend you do, because the narrative is why we're here, let's say it's escaping from a planet. Well, is there maybe a comms relay that you can get to? And does that add some kind of narrative kind of encouragement or impetus to that game and to that play as well? Playing to the nature of their legion. So if you wanted to get really, not really complex, but really dive into the narrative here, you could have a little card for each particular legion and a fun little objective that they should try to be achieving each game that's based on their lore and what that army's about. And then teaching you players as well. So maybe encourage playing people that they haven't played before, or, the more experienced players playing the newer players and helping them along with the game. You'd have to be tricky on how you do that. But what I'm trying to get at is that the behaviors you want from your community, you shape them by your events and not the other way around. So just think about that and encourage what you want your community to be doing and the kind of behaviors you want the players to display. If you don't want people to be that win at all cost kind of mentality, then you encourage it through your reward system. Number 3, an inclusive narrative with impactful outcomes. So deciding on an established location, timeline, or campaign within the Heresy setting to run your campaign within can be really tricky, as you don't want to create a narrative barrier to any legion or army taking part. So while I would love to run an Isfahan campaign, whether it be 3 or 5 or even the 2 of them, well, what are the Space Wolves doing, right? How does a Space Wolf player feel about turning up to those games? And sure, you could be like, oh yeah, it's a Space Wolf allied detachment that was hanging out with the Raven Guard. It doesn't feel as good. I just feel they won't be able to immerse as much in the narrative campaign when you have those kind of existing lore barriers by using established location timelines or campaigns. So what I recommend is going for a more original setting with a narrative hook that justifies why any legion can be involved. So we have HeroCon, I should say, 2022 coming up here in Canberra. That's being run in August. That's the ADF Wargaming Association that will be running that one. And the campaign narrative that Danny, the tournament organizer, has come up with for that one there is all around this warp disruption that is dragging smaller ships out of the Empyrean and stranding them in a system where they then have to fight for survival. So, we're not dictating exactly when it's happening or where it's happening, but just a little narrative hook that kind of explains why all the legions are there. And that's what you're looking for. And the game that we're playing out at Jolt, it has something very similar. Essentially, a bunch of different legions have been stranded, and they're all on a ship together, I think, and it's crashed. It all works, right? It makes sure that every player, no matter who they're bringing, feels good about it and is able to immerse themselves within the narrative, within the lore, and tell their own story, both in their mind and through the games they play. You also want to ensure that player actions and game outcomes impact the narrative. I've seen this done in a number of ways, but my favorite was the ability to contribute faction points to an overall objective. In this case, I think it was one of the Eye of Horus podcast events, actually. In this case, it was the securing of different planets within the system being fought over, which with each planet giving a small bonus to the faction that currently held it. It was really cool, and it added another, I guess, strategic macro game, if you will, over the smaller games that you were playing, because people were starting to discuss where they were going to put their points so that they could work together to capture a particular battle. And do we go for the planet that gives the really good bonus now, noting that might then hurt us in the long game to winning the whole tournament? And it was Loyalist versus Traitor, which is classic Heresy. And it just created this really fun interaction between players, working together and teamwork, and created a big overarching goal for everybody that they were all working towards. And it was really good. So the narrative was then getting impacted by each game that was being played, and other games could impact on other games. Now it started to get a little complex here, and things went a bit iffy. But the tournament organizers were really involved and really helped to drive that and talk to people through what their choices and options were and how it all worked. And they were cruising around and making sure tables were interacting with each other by what they could do. And it was a whole bunch of fun. And then future tournaments used that as a basis as well, and it was an ongoing narrative over multiple events. And it's such a nice way to do it, and it really draws the players in, not only for that first event, but for future events as well. It was nice. It's a great way to do it. So just make sure that your events have that inclusive narrative and that the outcomes feel impactful for the players. Number 2, freedom of play. There's 2 big aspects here. It's all about kind of what people play and then how people play. So when it comes to the what people play, I'm talking about their armies here. And I believe events should really try and have as few restrictions as possible, maybe even none, in these early days on army building, because TO should be letting players really try anything and everything before making the decisions to restrict particular army builds in the early days of Heresy 2nd Edition. Now, as we mature and we realize there may be certain builds out there that are a bit iffy, I'm looking at you, Fury of the Ancients, I'm pretty dubious, and we'll see it tested. So we know there's one player coming in August with 5 Dreadnoughts in a 1400 point list. So we'll see pretty quickly whether that's broken or not, but at the moment, let him do it, right? We haven't actually tested these things on the table, so let it happen. When it comes to letting people bring the armies they want to bring, even down the track, and we know what's broken and what's not, just be as open as you can without creating an event that's poisonous for those that are bringing more balanced armies. Because people have spent so much time putting these armies together and building them that if an event pack comes out and they suddenly realize, they might have even bought tickets already, and they suddenly realize they can't run the army they wanted to, or their army doesn't work, it creates a really negative experience, and you should definitely avoid it where you can. That's the what part. Now, the how part is the more casual event that I was talking about right at the start of the video. So I believe that you should just let players do what they want in a tournament. So let them play the opponents that they want to, let them play the kind of games they want to. In the end, it's just going to end in a lot more fun. You can start to step in and control things if you need to, if people can't find someone to play, match people up and do it how you need. But I've been to an event where you were even encouraged to have 3 different army lists ready at different points levels. So you could change up game sizes throughout the day, which were linked to different tables and game types. For instance, you were told to bring a 1500 point list separate to your bigger lists because there was a Zone Mortalis table, and you were encouraged for one particular objective to jump onto the Zone Mortalis table and have a crack at that. So just giving people a broad range of options and then letting them just go for it in any way they want, I think is a really nice way to do it. You'll find that a lot of Heresy players, we're a pretty small community, they'll know each other, so it's going to encourage these grudge matches over multiple events, which creates this extra narrative on top of the narrative within your community as well. And I think it makes for a lot of fun. So it can be tricky and it's hard letting go sometimes, but as a tournament organizer, I would recommend just letting your players do what they want to do within the loose narrative structure that you've built, and just kind of see what happens, see what they make of it. I think you'll find that it works and that everyone has a great time. Now, lastly, or firstly, if you will, number 1, most importantly, I feel for these kind of events, is to avoid compounding success. So there's nothing worse than a player within a campaign winning their first few battles and gaining such a functional gaming advantage that they then just kind of can't lose in future games. It really undermines the continuation of the campaign and doesn't feel great for the rest of the players. Necromunda and its campaign system is a great example of a terrible, and this is my opinion, some people may disagree, let me know in the comments, but I think Necromunda is just a terrible way to reward players during a campaign. The system's broken, it's not good. It gives the winner of missions access to more gangers, more war gear, other tangible advantages that can then be used in future games. What this does is create a snowball effect that isn't much fun for the players who lose their first few games and simply can't recover. And I've seen events do it. A good example is, you won your first game. One of the rewards you can choose or that you automatically get is, re-rolls in a particular circumstance, or one of your units gets +1, whatever stat that you're thinking of. And while it kind of sounds cool and it makes sense from a narrative point, it's just a really bad idea. And I would recommend tournament organizers to just stay away from it. Don't do it. I think an organizer needs to be really careful with what advantages they give out to players during a campaign. It's a controversial opinion, but my thoughts are that I actually prefer to give gaming advantages, that is, those mechanics that have an impact during a battle, so those extra stats that we're talking about, or rerolls, or orbital bombardments coming down, whatever it is. I prefer to give those advantages that happen during a battle to the players that lose. I then reward the players that are winning with narrative rewards. For instance, those points that we talked about for capturing planets, things that are going to impact the overall tournament, but aren't going to physically help them win more games within the campaign. I'd prefer to give those advantages to the guys that are losing, because they're the guys that need a leg up. They need a bit of help to allow them to just have a good time. So think about that, avoid compounding success, really think about your reward system and what that looks like, what you're giving out, what you're letting the players have access to. It makes a difference, and it can be the make or break between a good campaign or an event that leaves a bitter taste in people's mouth. So all in all, TOs need to remember that simplicity is key, and to ensure that every decision that goes into organizing an event is focused on maximizing fun for all participants, winning or losing. And that brings us to the end of our Heresy Chats for today. Thank you so much for watching. Let us know in the comments any innovative or interesting mechanics that you've seen or designed for wargaming events that you think would work well for Heresy. Importantly, make sure to keep rolling those dice and getting hyped for Heresy.